Hello and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Panviva, AusContact's national silver sponsor, and it's entitled Champion the Digital Use Case in Your Business. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, Mike Dyson, Senior Manager Capability and Design, Dan Sweeney, CICE Team Lead Westpac, and Brendan Tyrrell, Product Owner at Telstra, and Mike is from NBN. We hope to engage you in the conversation as well as provide some ideas to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll be having a Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'm Fiona Keogh, CEO of AusContact and your moderator for today. While we're waiting for everyone to join us, let's use the time to quickly run through some housekeeping. Remember, it's important to interact with us to maximise the benefit, and as you know, there's no need to take too many notes because we'll be providing you with the recording of the webinar. So to interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions or make comments for Mike, Dan and Brendan or myself from time to time. Don't forget, we're having a full Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please add your questions as we go along so you don't forget to ask them. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your internet connection, please note that on the control panel, you can click the raise hand button and the AusContact team will rush to your aid, or you can revert to your confirmation email with the link to the webinar, and all the relevant phone numbers and access codes will be available there for you. I know that many of you are familiar with asking questions, but let's try out the Q&A button on the control panel now, just in case. And the question for today is, and this has been in the news over the last couple of days, so it's not a trick question. Which state premier is currently in intensive care after slipping on wet steps? Now, he's in the deep south. Oh, halfway nose. We've got one quick typist so far. Could be the premier of a state that starts with V. Yep. Oh, Paul Julian knows, Kanika knows, Melissa knows. Right. So the answer is Dan Andrews, or the Premier of Victoria, and we do hope that he's well on his road to recovery. So with that, we know we're going to get lots of questions because you know how to use the Q&A button. I'm pleased to welcome our esteemed panel of experts who are going to share their experiences and expertise. And our first speaker today is Dan Sweeney, CICE Team Lead from Westpac. Dan, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Fiona. Hi, team. I hope you're all well. As Fiona mentioned, my name is Dan. I'm the Continuous Improvement Lead for the Westpac Group. I've got a team of, I think, 30-something specialists across 4 key streams. Those key streams are knowledge management, virtual support, conversation automation, and continuous improvement, which I can't spell. At the moment, we're deep within a proof of concept around a end-to-end knowledge support platform. It's actually going quite well. So the program leverages capabilities from all 4 of those key streams together in a bit of an agile Scrum sense. And it's ultimately bringing, at the face of it, is the Panviva application, shameless plug, but it encompasses banker knowledge support, automated chatbot support, and also human support for those escalations. So it's end-to-end knowledge management and support for our frontline bankers. It was intended just to be a little pilot, but it was so successful that within the first 6 months, it's been rolled out to our entire contact center across the nation for the Westpac Group, and with plans to roll out into the retail network now as well. It's achieving its 7-figure business benefit case, so you got to do the maths, figure out how big that is, but that's pretty good for a zero-cost little startup. But the details of that are, it's pretty detailed and it's probably a little bit boring. So I thought today I'd give you a bit of an analogy. It's just so that you can relate a little bit easier to it. So I need you to close your eyes and focus and think and imagine that you're an ex-tennis great. You're once really good tennis player, top seed or whatever you'd say, and you're now a former shadow of your former self. You're washed up, and you're putting on some weight around the edges. Everywhere you go, wearing your dark glasses, people identify you and remember you from your great days and come up and try and ask you, teach me how to do that forehand or that serve, or tell me how you used to be so quick off the mark and how you were so good at tennis, and they ask you for pointers. So that triggers a little bit of a reincarnation of some of your former glory, and you decide that you want to create a tennis academy or a tennis school, whatever you want to call it. So being a lifelong tennis star, you don't know how to do that, but you've got a vision and you've got a purpose. You know what you want to achieve. You don't know how to do it. You don't have the capability to build a tennis, school or a tennis academy. So you need to be a maximizer. So Sam, if you flick my next slide. Those of you who are taking screenshots of this, don't worry about that first slide. That was just to get you in the zone. So when I talk about being a maximizer, this is probably a key strength that I have, and it's one of those core strengths that you find people that are good at this type of game have and are quite strong about. And I've broken it down into three main capabilities or three main areas for you guys today. So the first is around be a maximizer of capability, and that's your capability and also the capability of the people around you. The first is train your squad. So if you've got a team of people, don't let their job role determine the limit of their capability. As the aspiring tennis great looking to start your tennis academy, you might hire some tennis coaches. That makes sense. But you might also look to try and upskill them or send them to, trade school or, concreting school, so they can actually help you build the tennis academy as well. So you're multi-skilling your squad. In my stream, I've been really, really lucky that I haven't hired roles. We've hunted and acquired people based on their capability, and then we've made a role that fits around them. And it's worked really well. Crowdsource, I'm a huge believer in crowdsource. If you've got an engaged user base, so for our tennis greats example, it's all of his old fans who are saying, hey, I want to be part of this. I want to, learn from you. Engage those people, learn from them. They're almost doing half of the work for you. In a digitization sense and in a service industry, think of your contact center staff, your retail footprint staff, the people that are on the front line, that there's a large amount of them. They can actually give you some really good insight and some really good intel. So engage with them. It's actually a really good activity, and it's really good for your banker engagement or your staff engagement as well. So they can see things that they're saying, hey, we should fix this. They can see that getting fixed. The next point is know some gurus. There's always that guru, the reporting guru or the Excel guru or that code guru. Find out who those gurus are. You probably already know a couple, and use them. Not so much, hey guru, can you do this bit of code for me? Or hey guru, can you write this API for me? Ask them to show you. People really love to demonstrate or to teach what they're really, really good at. And especially if it's not necessarily what they do in their day-to-day job, if it's like a little bit of a fringe skill they've got, they love to demonstrate that stuff. And recognize them for doing it. Spend some time to actually write, a letter to their boss, or recognize them through their formal platform. Maybe don't say, thanks for writing all that code for me when you were meant to be doing reporting, but thank them. It'll mean that they'll be a guru for you forever. The last point of capability, I've called it as both agiles. Agiles isn't a word, which is fine, but it is for today. So for agile, we talk about agile as methodology and like a change or development methodology, but also a mentality. And it's probably the mentality that's most important. The agile mindset is a core component of that growth mindset. And it really enables you to start the week transfixed on doing something. You've got this aim for your week, right? You want to achieve this one particular thing. And then with an agile mindset and mentality, you're actually able to say, oh, well, that didn't work, and put it in the bin on Friday and turn up for work on Monday and still be a happy person. So you need that agile mentality and mindset in your core. So that's capability. The next component is technology. Now, this is important, being a discussion around digitization today. Ultimately, digitization is the enablement of business through technology, right? Like it's the natural evolution of the way we do things, both for us as consumers, but also for our customers as consumers. So you need to be a maximizer of the existing technology platforms that we've got. So maximizing minimal which was hard to write, but it is. So ultimately, if you're developing something or you're building something or you're creating something or you're changing something, if you start small and if you break those larger change programs down into tiny little incremental changes that have some associated value, you're actually continuously building value as you go. So let's break it down, tiny little chunks. Stock take what you've got. So as a transformational maximizing leader, you need to understand the suite of applications that you as an organization or you as a person or you as a group have access to and what you can do with those applications. So for instance, if you've got an Office 365, a corporate Office 365 account, there's a pretty good chance you've got access to a suite called Power Apps. Within Power Apps, it's almost an end-to-end automation engine for a normal sort of business user to jump into. So understand all of the applications that you've currently got access to as a group. And the next point is understand their potential. So know what those applications can do. So stepping away from the tennis star analogy, going back to our knowledge support platform analogy, we had no idea that Panviva had all of this API connectivity that we weren't currently leveraging. So quick chats with our Panviva contacts, and we actually uncovered a really good opportunity to make some excellent efficiency saves in our business utilizing that technology that we just didn't know existed. And the last point on technology is there's always something happening out there in the business world. So volunteer to participate. Part of our success in our chatbot space was we just put up our hand and said, hey, that sounds interesting. I want to be a part of that. And now 6 months, 12 months down the track, we've got a fully functional banker supporting bot just because we put up our hand and said, hey, we want to be a part of that and we want to give that a go. So that's technology. The last one, just checking my time, still good for time, is be a maximizer of value. Now, this is important. I think this will probably come up in the questions, which is, how do you get money? How do you get a business case off the ground? It's important to find a need first. And the example I'll give you, and hopefully this resonates with at least some of you, is big organizations always have a large transformational, technology program underway, right? It takes 10 years to get there. You deploy it and it's, by then it's out of date probably anyway. If you go talk to your frontline people, right? Frontline people, again, they're the gold that you need to be engaged with. But you go talk to them and say, hey, how's that new application going? They'll tell you it's very, very, very cute new application, looks excellent. It's got all these bells and whistles, but the process is still the same. What we have to do is still the same. The customer outcome is still the same. So find that need within your organization. And again, if you don't know what that is, go and talk to your frontline people, your people in the contact center, the people in the retail network, the people that actually talk to customers. They're an excellent resource for that. Create value before money. This one's a little bit trickier to do, but it helps that business case stack up if you can actually demonstrate what the value is before you come back and ask for money. So in our proof of concept, our knowledge support platform, we basically built the end-to-end application using sticky tape and a screwdriver here or there and some funny code that we learned ourselves along the way. And we've created value within the platform that now we can say, all right, well, if we want to invest in that and make it better and make it probably more compliant, we can see the actual value of that improvement now. So we've demonstrated that value before we ask for money. And the last one, which I think is super important and something that I try and instill within all of my team, is fail fast. Like, failure is not just an option. It's not just something that may happen and be comfortable with it. It's actually necessary. If you're delivering change and if you're pushing those boundaries of change and if you're pushing the boundaries of your organization, you will fail. And it's actually a measure of your success if you're doing those things right. Be sure to instill the psychological safety within your people, that it's okay to fail and they should be failing, and tell me about your failures and what did you learn and how can we adjust and how do we go back and do that again on Monday and do it better. So with 1 minute to go, I'm probably talking now to the change makers, the transformational leaders, even a team manager on the contact center floor. Every single change that you're going to make starts with you. And if you start with Maximizer as a capability that you invest in, I can't guarantee your success, but you'll definitely have a lot more fun doing it. Back to you, Fiona, in the studio.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much for sharing being a maximizer. So we're going to get you to do some work now, and we're going to launch our first poll. And the question Jess, if you could launch it, is where are you currently in your digital journey? And the options to choose from. It's just a dream. We're very traditional. We've hit a technical roadblock. We're stuck at the funding stage. We've completed an MVP. We've rolled out a couple of projects. And Sam, you're Panviva's digital transformation strategist. So you must be aware of what's going on in the marketplace. What are you expecting to see mostly from this question?
I think, Fiona, to Dan's point that he made, fail fast, fail often. We say learn fast, learn often, just not to terrify people. But what we see a lot is that people get stuck in this planning paralysis where they're just really terrified to get started and they think that they don't have. So I would say that we may see a lot of people in there, and that also fits into the technical roadblock because they just think they don't have access to tech people. You know, I'm a business person, I have no idea how any of this works. I think we might see a little bit in that space.
Well, I think with most of our attendees voting, we will close the poll and share what people are telling us. Oh my goodness, we've got a very experienced bunch of attendees. They've already rolled out a couple of projects. We should get them as speakers. No one's dreaming. That's probably a good thing. So everybody is actually on that path. And we've got 17% stuck at the funding stage. We've completed a most viable product at 13%, and we've hit a technical roadblock. And of course, that would not be with Panviva. That goes without saying. So a really interesting spread of responses. So let's keep moving along and let's welcome to the microphone Mike Dyson, Senior Manager Capability and Design from the NBN. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Fiona. And I suppose where Dan is the maximizer, I'm probably the storyteller. So that's probably my little stick on there. And I think it really important for me was how we kickstarted our digital transformation through just literally simple stories. So we do have a few more slides than Dan's. I'm going to be saying the word next a lot. So Sam, next, if you will, please. But in terms of where we are in our design challenge or what we had, when I walked into NBN and our service assurance, there's guys who had to work on actually supporting customers when their internet went down. These guys had like 50 plus systems to use. Excel was like everywhere, which drives me batty. Each team was like a specialist little group that only dealt with subsystems. And we're looking at 2 million plus new customers at that stage. Since that stage, we're now added about 3.5 million customers since I first looked at this process. And we're going to have to hire something like 2,000 to 3,000 new staff, which, as you can imagine, for anyone is a bit scary as you go into these situations. So my first lesson, which we'll start to go into, Sam, if you please, was really that through this, everywhere I looked, everyone loved to blame everyone. So if on to the next slide, thanks, Sam. My first lesson was everything is a they problem. Everywhere I looked, everyone wanted to kind of blame and point fingers at everyone else. Brendan, I think we pointed fingers at you quite a few times, mate. But that's sort of what happens. And Sam, if you kind of flick forward because these couple of slides are really quick, is everything we learned from everyone was they will trick the system to get what was done. They don't care about getting the right job done. They don't follow instructions. Like everyone just wanted to point the finger at everything. And it really wasn't actually helping us. So, the first job I had to really work out how to actually start a digital transformation within NBN, next slide, Sam, was to really work out how do we actually make it an us problem? How do we actually bring the people together with not just the customers and the partners and the field workforce, but also internal staff, even the silo boundaries. I think anyone who's ever lived in a large corporate knows how much fun it is. We stopped calling it silos. We started to call it fiefdoms. Some of them had cannons on the walls that would shoot at you if you approached them. Dan's laughing, as you can tell, storytelling is my thing. But yeah, obviously this was the problem we walked into. So the first thing I did was actually work out some of these stories. So if we can go to the next slide, Sam. And it was all about making not just stories, but relatable stories. So I'm going to share with you 3 of the key stories that actually led to a digital transformation project that's delivered more than $100 million of benefits. And I sneakily looked at some of our attendees before, and I can see some other former NBNers in there, and they can attest to this. So Sam, if you flick to the next slide. The first thing I had was to actually convince our executive team that we needed to actually do something different in his space. And he was brand new to the job. And also being brand new to the job after coming into a new department, I'd also been escalated to the senior leadership for doing something disruptive again. So I'm sure he was really keen to meet me the first time. But what I did with him was I went up to him and asked him, how quickly would it be if I sent you an email? How quickly could you respond to that email? And he looked at me and went, I don't know, in 30 seconds, I could respond to that. And I went, well, let me tell you what your team do. If we send a note to a service provider asking for further information, this is what your agents need to go through. It was a 6-system, 6-minute process to effectively get through a whole point where we sent a contact to a provider. Let's be nice and just call them Unicorn Internet Service Provider. No, not picking on anyone today. And we asked them, can you tell us what the customer sees when this occurs? They wrote back going, sure, we'll let you know. And our team groans, crap, that's triggered all our SLAs, our process, everything. I have to pick up the ticket, I've got to sign it to myself, I've got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. To put it all the way back into the status at the start, which just went, thanks, 6 minutes. Then we had to work out what we do with it. So that's how we launched one of these. The second one we had was everyone started saying that when we're working with our service providers, they needed to train their staff better. The reason why we're getting all these dirty tickets, where we're throwing tickets back, where we're getting rejections, is just because their staff are just not being trained and not following the system or the process. Now, for those who have ever dealt with telco, we're talking about a process that involves you understanding decibel readings, voltages, and other forms of electrical engineering standards, which even after 5 years, I still can't get my head around. And what we then expected was that you would actually be able to service not just one of these technologies, but they had to service all 6 access technologies. So we've got satellite, we've got fixed wireless, we've got fiber to the node. You've heard them all, right? And obviously everyone complains about fiber to the premise. And with all that together, we sat there and asked this team, how long would it take you to become an expert in one of these technologies? And they went, 6 months. And I went, cool. Guess what? We ran the logs off this portal. Operators are only staying in their job 3 to 4 months max. In fact, we even met some of the operators who told us that our tool set was so complex and so heavy that they left their jobs because they hated working on the tool set that much. And I can tell you right now that every time I ever walked into a meeting, in this point, I've been at NBN for about 2 years, everyone would tell me that the core problem was that the service providers need to train their staff better. Every expert in the room suddenly went, oh shit, these guys are never going to be able to get their job done. They're never going to know what it is. They're never going to actually get the right outcome for the customer. And it was this total light bulb moment that went off for everyone that we needed to do something differently. The last one we had was really around a particular date, I think called a planned remediation date, a date where it is we need to do something significant to your connection, but the date moves. It changes a lot because it involves getting council permission, it involves all sorts of stuff. But we don't really publish that date. And so customers have to chase us. And they have to chase us, and it took 14 minutes per transaction just to find out what the new date was. And we received enough to warrant being 150 to 200 hours of answering just that one date question a week in a team, in one team that took this, where 16 took these inquiries. So each of these scenarios, these are embedded problems. But it wasn't until we actually went into these stories and started articulating these in really different fashions that we actually started to see really different outcomes. Next slide, please, Sam. So what made these stories so successful? Well, we changed each story conversation to something connected to them every day. So when it was working with the executives, we really delved into things like emails and things that had an analogy to, and then applied that to incident management process. When it dealt with the technical expertise in our network engineering teams, it was really about understanding the technical tool sets and the fact that it took them that long to get trained and become an expert in it until they could get there. And with each of those as well, we then needed to have some form of numbers, because numbers make sense. When we started talking about, right, it takes you 30 seconds, but it takes them 6 minutes, and they do this many times. When we say it's a 14-minute transaction and we receive this many a day, it equates to something that quite quickly becomes a business benefit. Especially for myself, I run a combined design and business architecture practice. Don't ask me to write a business case. We'll fudge our way through it, but it's boring. But enough to actually inspire you to go, maybe we should invest into this. Maybe we should then actually spend the time. And how do we actually experiment with this further? And the last thing as well was making sure that we took ownership of the problem to begin with as well, with a recommendation and action afterwards. So we never went into these situations just giving story for story's sake. We went, and this is what we're going to do about that story. And it was a default yes assumption. Anywhere I walked into with one of these stories, my assumption as I walk out was I'm going to get yes for permission to proceed. And they need to either give me information that I do not have or convince the hell out of me we shouldn't do this. It's their role to give me shielding from stuff they might not know. It's not going to them to go, please, sir, can we do this? It's we are doing this. Next slide, please, Sam. So how did it went really well. We spun up this program called Jigsaw. Jigsaw was a combination of process optimization, automation, simplification of the UI. It was made of many pieces. We had no border pieces on our picture puzzle for this. The same executive asked me why there was no edge pieces. I went, because next year we're going to add more pieces to the puzzle. He then went, right, so when do we get edge pieces? I'm like, we never do. We keep adding it to the puzzle. And he looked at me and went, you're a smartass and I love your bloody branding. And not only that, this meeting here with Oprah got turned into full GIF that was sent around the company, that then actually got to the C-level, and he messaged me. I don't know how the C-level got this, but they messaged me when that GIF was hilarious. So it started a company revolution. And not only that, we're now starting, this is now rolled out to all our service assurance operators. It prevented us having to hire a whole bunch of staff. It's actually given our staff more career progression because they can now not just be specialists on one access technology, they can work on multiples. And now we're rolling out to field techs, we're rolling out to service providers, aspects of this. It was a way of life and way of thinking that really went well. Thank God, still here, right? Next slide. So why don't we solve for this? Like, you know, these things feel like they're rocket science when we come into them. Sorry, Sam, you must have missed that one. I was saying to the next page. Nope. We're missing some slides.
I think, hang on, let me grab it. You just keep talking, Mike. I'll grab your slide.
Thank you. So when we think about this and when we think about looking at the landscape we are in, pain points in the organization are like stars in the sky, right? There is billions of stars out there. The challenge that you have when you ask someone about the pain point is they will point at the most nearest star, which is the sun. And when you have the sun in the sky, you cannot see any other damn pain point. Maybe Venus, but that's about it, right? That is the problem. And the problem with solar pain points, the sun pain points, the so obvious pain points, it's the one that throws you off the game. We went to launch some automation with our field workforce. When we launched it, suddenly everyone was screaming at us because it fell over 4 times out of 10. Everyone's like, you didn't test this. How the hell did this happen? And I went, wait. Let's go check with the team because it's the same system in our internal agencies. Went over and asked them, how's the system performing today? Oh, normal. How's this test running today? Normal. How often does it fall over? Oh, yeah, normal. How much is normal? 4 times out of 10. Oh, yeah, what do you do when that happens? We send it to that guy. Oh, and what does he do? Oh, he fixes it, and then it's okay. No one had ever raised this because they had a workaround. It was just one of these micro pain points that was taking so much effort, so much quality out of the business. Because the one thing they would tell me is, oh, you know, the biggest problem to solve is you've got to get that FTTP serial number box. Because if I don't have it, I can't do anything. Now, when you actually measure it, 1 time out of like maybe 100, you actually need that damn ID. But they just thought it was the most mandatory thing because if they didn't have it, it made them chase, it made them run, it made them do all sorts of extra activities. It threw them off their game. So for them, that was the sun. We also worked out with storytelling that it works at the other end of the side as well, which is how do we make storytelling work really well when we're trying to roll this out to operators? And as you imagine, most people freak out when they're doing digital transformation and also automation within the operators. So we gave the stories around what each of the automation streams are doing. One was the messenger who was just sitting there gathering information and passing it on to the right person. It was the postie taking it from one person to another. Another one was the investigator who was sitting there and actually gathering all the insights and allowing you to be the detective, but they were gathering all the information for you. The last one was the defender who was shielding you from the work that you should never looked at. And once we added that kind of messaging persona, it was the same automation job, by the way. But once we created those and that story, then all the operators, everyone involved actually thought this was amazing. Through that, that's how we got that change. Both the storytelling at the start and the storytelling through and the storytelling at the end allowed us to actually unveil this massive digital transformation. And Fiona, I think I'm probably at time anyway.
You are, Mike, and we'll get Jess to launch the poll. Everybody lean in, hands on the keyboard. So the second poll is, how clear is the business problem you are trying to solve? And your selection, your choices are, we don't have a specific problem, we just want to get started. There are too many problems, we don't know where to focus. We know the problem but haven't completed our business case. We know the problem but we have no idea how to solve it. We know the problem and have the supporting data. Now, I don't know, maybe Mike, you could maybe give us a bit of a sense from NBN's perspective without giving the baby away with the bathwater. You know, where were you when you started on this journey?
Definitely, there were too many problems. We didn't know where to focus, and a sense of even just not knowing what problems we had to solve. So the combination of the two. So I like to liken NBN to two speeds. It's either wildfire or glacial, and that's how we dealt with some of the problem statements. And the other prioritization framework was the 2C prioritization framework, charisma and crankiness. So I'm watching Dan almost try to not spit out his water. But, whoever's shouting the loudest or was really good at storytelling usually got stuff to the top of the prioritization pile. And luckily enough now that we're being more problem focused and ranking those problems the right way, that allows us to now kind of solve for the right thing.
Thanks, Mike. And if we can close the poll, it's clear that most of our attendees, 45% in fact, actually know what the problem is and have the supporting data. So it looks like they're ready to jump and start the work. Secondly, at 36%, we know the problem but haven't completed our business case, with the others well away. So a well-prepared bunch of attendees, and looks like they're about to jump in, boots and all. Now, our next speaker is not from a place called Unicorn. I'm very pleased to welcome Brendan Tyrrell, Product Owner at Telstra. Welcome, Brendan, and take it away.
Thank you, Fiona, and Mike, we might have a few words afterwards. My story is going to be very similar to Dan and Mike's. I'll run through some very, common topics and common themes that we've all had in our digitisation journey. But I guess starting off with my background, I've been with Telstra for 15 years, but for the first 12 years, I was actually a field technician. So out restoring services and connecting customers all across the country. And then about 3 years ago, I put my hand up and said, yeah, I'll have a crack at this new job role that came out, which was Product Owner of Knowledge Management. So I walked into the role and then tried to work out what that actually meant. So basically, what I lacked in, the background in knowledge management, I made up for in my understanding of the user and of the problem that I was actually trying to solve. So if you jump across, Samantha. So we came in, had a look at, where we're at and what I was trying to solve. So given that in Telstra, we've obviously got a long history. We've supporting the new and emerging technologies as well as a lot of our legacy. So infrastructure that's been around for 50 or 60 years. We can't just grab those old technical documents and throw them out because we don't need them anymore, because they're still very much alive and working. As well as we're trying to control, the rate of change that we're seeing in the technology climate and trying to adapt for all of this flood of new information that's coming in and trying to work out how do we control it, how do we deliver it. So as a technician, definitely felt the pain of the other users of when I need to find technical information. It was really difficult to try and work out, or where do I go? Who do I talk to? Where is that piece of information? Is it accurate? Because it could be 20 years old. and really trying to understand that. So, but for me, that was just my own personal view. So we wanted to see, is that the common view? Does everyone agree with that? So essentially what we did is we spun up a bit of a discovery sessions. So we got a whole bunch of stakeholders from my ex-peers as technicians. We got the technical experts involved. We got the support teams who field these escalation requests, and really sort of worked with them and trying to understand what are all of the different, I guess, perspectives on the problem. How do they access knowledge? How do they consume knowledge? What are their personal thoughts on it? Like, anything was on the table, basically. And using that and using the user verbatims that we captured out of that, we then sort of formulated a bit of a case study to try and paint the picture of what is the user and what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve. And then basically for me to understand how big the impact was, I did a time and motion study. So basically I got a sample group out of that sample group. I sat them down with the scenario and I said, hey, similar to Mike's example there with the email, I said, here's the scenario that you have. I was like, show me how you find the correct procedure. And I just timed them. And I just said, right, go, start to finish. And eventually got to the result they were looking for. And I just took down those times and got a pretty good average of sort of how long it was taking. So, and later in my slide deck, you'll see that. So basically gathered all that information. If you jump across, Sam, and we've managed to paint this picture of who the user is. So you've got the sample group on there, and we've managed to pull together what is the profile. Now, we don't at all expect you to read everything that's on this slide, but basically by just grabbing some of the common themes that we grabbed out of that sample group, we had a pretty good sort of view on what are the common themes. So basically, there was the technical expert who had the knowledge in their head. They don't read work instructions because they don't need to. They're already the expert. There's others that really lean heavily on support staff. So instead of trying to self-serve and solve the problems themselves, they just call for help straight away because it's often easier to call that guy because he knows how to do it, as well as sort of using outside of, I guess, the Telstra ecosystem and a lot of YouTube and self-learning mechanisms that way. So we managed to paint a really good picture. So we knew who our user was, how they operate, how they interact with and consume knowledge. And then we also, with my time and motion studies, we also could really paint the picture of, I guess, the scale of the scenario. So if you want to jump across, Samantha. So you'll see there in the before. So the time and motion studies similar to Mike. So an average of 9 minutes and 14 seconds for them to find the correct instruction. So from start to finish, that was, I guess, for me, that was my yardstick. So basically now I knew the problem, I knew the user, and now I knew what's my benchmark. So what am I trying to beat? So similar to some of the themes before with the fail fast, mine was start small and test your options. So we looked at sort of some of the options that we had at our fingertips at the time. So we played around with SharePoint and sort of what can we do with that. Didn't really seem to solve the problem. It was just kind of like wrapping it in a nice bow, but still the underlying problem was there. But then at the same time as me joining this team and starting up, we had a number of other streams with our testing diagnostic teams. We had our chatbot all sort of starting up at the same time. All of them had the API capability, which was how we landed in with Panviva. Was we saw them as a really sort of a good option as it supports our, I guess, strategy for knowledge, as well as had the capability that we were also building simultaneously in the project. So essentially, we did what a lot of agile teams do. We built a very rough version. So we just basically bolted it together, got connectivity, proved that we could do it. And I went and grabbed that same sample group and I said, hey, how about you have another go at it using this tool? And essentially got the same users to do the same process and managed to pull it back down to 42 seconds. So when you look at that, it's like a 9 minute time duration down to under a minute. And then if you, like the economies of scale, you multiply that over 100 or 1,000 times a day, there's your business benefits. Very, very simple math, like Mike mentioned. So basically, at that point, I got to this sort of landing where I knew the problem, knew the user, and now we had an idea of how digitization could solve that problem. So we'd proved it. So then the next phase was, knuckle down and go hard at it. So if you jump across, Sam. So this was the phase where we really throttled down, went hard at it, and were just busy in the background, just churning through it and churning through it and churning through it. And unfortunately, it's probably one of the parts, if I had my time again, I would do a little bit differently, because I was so focused on what I knew we could achieve that it kind of put the blinkers on of what was also possible outside of my original scope. So coming from a field technician background, coming into the team, and I was so user focused and focusing on how I can solve that problem, sort of was blind to, I guess, other opportunities that were presented outside of the business unit. So I was doing your standard stakeholder engagements, keeping people up to date with progress, how I'm going, all the rest of it. One part I probably didn't factor in was the people who own all of this technical content, and especially the ones that are outside, I guess, my original scope. Didn't really involve them in sort of how their, I guess, use cases and how they operate and how that flows into my whole solution. So eventually I was asked to present, I guess, why I'm doing what I'm doing to these other teams, and walked into there and sort of very confident and thought, yeah, okay, I was confident in my solution. I'm going to walk in and say, hey, here's how we're doing things better. It was definitely a sort of moment afterwards where I went, oh my goodness, how did I just do that? I basically just walked into another business unit, showed them my solution, and told them how I can do their job better. It was definitely a humbling moment where I thought, right, I'm on the back foot now. So like big corporations, the walls go up, the shot towers are there, and yeah, you're up against it from that moment. So it definitely didn't derail my product. It just definitely slowed things down and had to rebuild those relationships again and sort of try and shape and involve them. And then once I did that, once I got their engagement, involved it, understood their sort of ways of operating and how we can manipulate the solution and tweak it as we went, and sort of cater for them as well. And then we could all pull it in so that we still got the outcome that we were after, but also met the needs of other people. So definitely that was one of my lessons as we go through this. So I'll jump across, Samantha, to my last slide. And it leads into that. I continue to adapt and grow. And it's not just necessarily as a product, like the product obviously needs to adapt to grow, because 2 years ago when we had the problem statement, you do need to challenge that from time to time. Is that still a problem? And is the scale of the problem still there? But it's also, don't limit yourself to your own imagination. So originally I came in with that top group, the field services, so trying to solve a problem for the technicians. But then when we went and talked to other business units, I was like, hang on a minute, there's opportunities outside of, I guess, my chain of command and my scope, where I can actually help other areas within the business, because we're all still one Telstra, and potentially use what we've already created and the idea and the product, and using sort of what we had available and bringing them on the journey, we could achieve a lot more. So you can see down on the left-hand side now, we've got 4 separate business units that are all operating in our one sort of product, with Panviva there in the center. And then on the right, it's sort of not limiting myself to the scopes that we have originally. So we've got the CT dashboard, which is our testing diagnostic tool. There's the office-bound staff that access Panviva directly because they get all the benefits out of that functionality. And also our chatbot, which is calling the same APIs so that we've got some consistency with what we're sending. But we're also very heavy users of Power Apps. We're playing around with HoloLens, trying to see how can we use that technology to really take our technicians to the next level. And now I'm trying to work out how do I get my knowledge and pull that in there as well as a few other options as well that we have at our sort of capacity. So that was probably I guess where I'm at this point in my own journey. So we've got a product that's working and it's operating and it's giving us good benefits. But yeah, now still looking beyond that and trying to open up my eyes a little bit to, I guess, what's the potential? Where can I take this? So I hope you all enjoyed that little story and a glimpse into my world. And I'll throw it back to yourself, Fiona.
Thanks, Brendan, and I love you living on the edge by telling everybody how you can do their jobs for you. I'm sure there are a few contracts taken out at that point in time on you. So we have our final poll, which is, Jess, if you could launch, which digital touchpoint is your biggest priority? And your options to choose from are chatbot and live chat integration, CRM integration, Power Apps, employee self-service, and Microsoft Teams. Now, Sam, Panviva goes into lots and lots of different organisations, and you must see a varietal. What are you seeing the most, if I can put you on the spot?
You can, Fiona. I'm not sure if I can sway either way. The speakers today have spoken a lot about Power Apps, which is really exciting for me to hear. I think Power Apps and chatbots and probably CRM integration. So not really giving you one specific answer.
That's okay, and neither are our attendees giving us one specific answer. Maybe, Jess, if we can close the poll now, just so that we can get into Q&A. So number one, with a bullet, chatbot and live chat integration at 45%, followed by CRM integration at 33%, Power Apps bringing up the rear and tying employee self-service and Microsoft Teams. So probably not where you thought it would be, Sam, but you now have the microphone to bring us home. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And thanks so much to our lovely customers for presenting their stories. All pretty unique, but a common theme that hopefully you saw there. There's two things that you must get right before you start your digital journey. One is you have to understand your business problem. And the second is you really need to know the persona you're designing for. So some of our attendees on the call may never have seen us before at Panviva, and some of our customers might be here. I thought I would just share our product ecosystem so you can start to imagine the possibilities and the problems we could solve, because I think it was Dan that said, oh, hey, I didn't realize Panviva could do this. And I just want to do a little bit of myth busting for you, then speak about our special offer, and then another certain surprise. So our history has been helping contact center agents and back office with our Panviva core product. We were really, really great at serving up policies, process, and procedure, so complex interactions, but long documents. The team on the phone have told you today that, you know what, their business changed and the way they delivered knowledge had to change as well. We knew that, so we started to extend out our product offering. The next thing that we added was our API platform. I'm not going to get too technical on the call today, but our head of innovation, Rose, on the call, so feel free to ask those questions. APIs are basically split into three key areas. So the first is our content APIs. In simplest form, imagine your contact center agent is referring to a product summary, and you want to be able to share that exact information out onto your website for your customer. That's perfect and really easy. It's not as exciting though. Let's start to talk about Power Apps, seeing it's the theme of the day. Imagine you're publishing a critical communication right here in Panviva for your frontline staff. Over the years, what we've heard is it would be so great if we could take that same information and share it to people that don't use this product. That's fine. By using Power Apps, what we can do is as soon as it's published in Panviva, we can send a blast out to a certain group in Teams so everyone has that same update. We're reducing the time it sends critical comms, and it's a really great story for you. Let's talk about live APIs because they get a little bit more exciting. We're talking about adding triggers from one connection to another. So maybe you've got an agent in your contact center who is using Salesforce, and as they move from screen to screen in Salesforce, the right knowledge article is popping up following your customer journey. That's a nice, easy one. But the third one is our artifact APIs. And this is where we get a little bit more exciting again, because all of our speakers today have spoken about the need to redesign the way that knowledge is delivered. And if we think about the ACE chatbot that Brendan spoke about, and we think about his persona of the field technician, they don't want to read long documents. They need little snippets, and we call them knowledge nuggets. And our artifact APIs are allow us to slice and dice documents and serve them up into those more exciting channels. So I don't want to scare you, because that might sound like a lot of work, and what people think is, wow, that is duplication. Every channel needs a different version, but that's why we created Digital Orchestrator, because we believe in having a single source of truth so that information is governed and you've got great usability. And Digital Orchestrator allows you to curate responses and serve them up specific to an audience or a channel. And Brendan knows this part of the platform very intimately. And you know what? Last year was really interesting for everyone. I'm sure that a lot of you are still working remotely, and you're finding it maybe a little bit hard to connect in with your teams. We saw that as well, and so we started working with Microsoft to introduce our newest team member, who is Nugget. And Nugget is our trusty sidekick for Microsoft Teams. He is a ready-to-go bot that serves up knowledge nuggets to your employees. So you can download Nugget in the App Store and get in up and running probably in about 48 hours, we say. Some get it even sooner, but he's the last piece of our product puzzle for now. That's enough about us. What I want to do is talk a little bit more about you. So this on the background, we're hiding it because we've got it there for your digital download that we've created for you. This is our persona on the page cheat sheet, and because you've attended today, you'll get access to this. It may look similar because we did go through a similar exercise with Brendan and the team with the field technicians. Our persona on a page template looks at human-centered design, which Mike is also a fan of, and it looks at understanding the user. So what are they thinking, doing, feeling, and saying? It makes us be able to give that person a name and help create the best design. So for coming today, you get access to this, and Ro and I have put together a nice little explainer video to help you work through that template. But that's not all today. What I also want you to do is save the date, because this is just the first of our webinar series. This is just to get you a little bit excited and start to understand what you could achieve. The next session on May 12th is about getting your hands dirty and starting to build out some options. So it doesn't matter how technical or not technical, if you're me, that you are, the next session allows you to get started really on your project. And that's it from me, Fiona. We can open up to questions.
And we have some. Thank you very much, Sam. So I'm going to put Dan on the spot just because I can. So he's quivering in his boots. We have 2 questions from Joshua, and he did apologise for being greedy and asking 2 questions in one fell swoop. So his questions are, I'll ask them one at a time. How do you lead a successful change when the business strategies constantly shift due to external factors or internal influence, you know, due to new executives, etc.?
That's a good question. Thank you, Joshua. I've got a guy on my team called Joshua. He asks good questions like that too. So it's definitely an impact. In our world, we're delivering value every week, right? So we might build a new connection with, between 2 applications, and the organization might decide, all right, we're not using that application anymore. We're going to use, this one. Whilst the work that we've built to connect those 2 or to have that as part of our platform may be wasted, and we might have to redo work, and, we might have to reinvest in that work, the capability that we delivered to write that and to build that connection and to use that connection in our platform is kept. So we can do it faster next time. We know how that works. All of these applications are written in a similar sort of language. So it's probably, I would look at the value that we derive from the capability that we learned in doing that work, and not so much the strategic shift that's cost us some work and some value. Good question. I hope that answers it, Joshua.
Thanks, Dan. And for the second question, maybe we'll hear from Brendan this time, because I know measurement's very important in Telstra. So how do you measure something as being successful when the baseline is constantly jumping?
That's a very challenging question. Early on, it's very simple. You sort of have your baseline and you measure to it. But for me, I just keep reevaluating as I go and keep challenging my own benchmark. So guess what is the measure of success. So originally I had my average time that I'm trying to sort of solve for and resolve that. But now it's kind of my new average time of 42 seconds is now my benchmark. So it's continually to challenge your own product, continually challenge the problem at the same time. Because I definitely feel that maybe that 42 seconds is not a problem. Like it's one of the most challenging things for me to quantify with knowledge is what's good. Obviously, if you see a massive spike in usage, that's a good thing because people are reading your product and using your product and following work instructions. But it's also a flip. It's a negative because if everyone's having to go to the procedure to do their day-to-day activities, then maybe there's an issue with the procedure that needs to be looked at. So I don't really have a direct answer on how you do that, but that's probably my suggestion on how I approach it. Is obviously continually challenging my own product, but also challenging why we do what we do. And yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks, Brendan. I think, trying to exceed your personal best is always a good approach. Mike, I know you don't have these issues at the NBN, but I'm going to get you to answer this one. How do I decide what my MVP should be? We have so many problem areas.
And the problem being that MVP is almost a dirty word in some respects, right? Look, it really comes down to who you're working with and what you're trying to learn from it. Like the truest principle of an MVP is the minimum I need to test for. I tend to open more and focus on what an MLP is, minimal lovable product, because that's a little bit more about where I'm trying to take it and the strategy behind it. But I think anyone who sits there and has no runway after determining what an MVP is lying about what an MVP is. They're just trying to tick a box on delivery pipeline. So it's really about how you coach, use those words, have framing around what is it you're actually trying to test and learn from, and making sure that's built and very understood. So literally we're just about to start running some more design sprints right now, and we're targeting a concept build at the end of it, and we're calling that concept prototype the MVP because it's the minimum we can use to get a test out. Funny enough, Brendan, it's with field engineers, so I'll probably come and annoy you for some insights as well. And we're not building code. When people tell me, when can we build the code for the MVP? And I'm like, we're not at this stage where we're going to build this out to learn from, because we can beforehand. And then we'll design what the minimal lovable is and go from there.
Thanks, Mike. Bit of a change of pace. Who pays for the digital project? My business unit doesn't have the budget. Anybody want to jump in on that one? Don't all rush me.
Yes,
Thanks,
all
Dan.
of us.
Love
think.
it.
I think it's got to, like Mike and Brendan have said, you got to demonstrate some value before you throw cash at it. We've all seen programs where you deliver this great new flashy toy and it does nothing that's intended to do, or it does none of the value, or no one uses it. So it's about finding the value first. Even like Mike, running an MLP to get something out that your users can touch and play with, and you can build better assumptions based on that. But create value first before you ask for the money.
Cool. Sam, I'm going to ask you a question. And you alluded to it a little bit before in your presentation, but let's reiterate. Our business is using Teams. Mm-hmm. How could we trial Nugget?
Okay, this is a very easy question, so I'm glad I got it. So all you need to do is go into the App Store in Teams, search for Nugget and download him. We have two options available, so you can test him out. So like everyone mentioned, will he actually serve a purpose? We think he will. And then you go through. So it's just go into the App Store, download him, and then start the journey with Nugget. It's as simple as that.
Well, Sam, that just sounds too easy. Fantastic accessibility and availability for anyone that's using Teams. Well, we're almost at the hour. Can you believe we've almost reached the end of today's session, and I want to thank Mike and Brendan and Dan, and to you, Sam, as well, and to Panviva, our national silver sponsor, for sharing your expertise so transparently, warts and all, brands, the whole box and dice, and also your experiences. And you're such good speakers and such good storytellers, and you do learn so much from stories. So with that, Sam, any closing remarks from you, and then we'll wish everybody a fabulous rest of their day.
No, just thank you to our speakers. We'll see you on May 12th. And don't forget to reach out if you've got a problem that you need to solve, because I'm sure we can help you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks once again to our speakers. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you might be. See you next time.